Okay, so we're going to start with last week's
Good
questions that we
evening,
didn't get to.
Tammy. How are
Well,
you?
I'm good. How are
We're
you?
so busy today. I just want to
It
race
has been
into.
like I hung up a phone call and I've got another one to call after I get done with this, but like I was like, I gotta go. We've got a webinar. So it's just been
Okay, you
back to
see
back nuts.
this? I have red pen days and blue pen days and green, and today is a red pen day. So I'm out and ready to go.
Okay, I've got a red pen too. All right. Okay. How do you determine when someone with a long history, 50 plus years, and many failed relationships is ready to date in a year?
Can you help with the question? I'm not quite sure I understand.
Well, to me it feels like somebody who has a long history of relationship failed relationships is looking to get into the
Oh,
dating world. Like
uh-huh.
I think this is a great question. What would you be looking for to
Sure.
be able to start dating? What benchmarks would you be looking for?
Well, Tammy and I've talked about this before. The last thing I would ever want to do, being a sex and love addict, is choose my own dates and also go through the process of dating without support. So one thing I can say is I don't care whether you're 50 years or 20 years or, what I know is that I have a bad picker and I pick the wrong people. And I also turn away the right people. I've had many because, some of us say like, oh, they're boring, which means they're healthy. And so, Tammy and I've talked about this before, but I create a dating plan. I bring it to either sponsor or therapist. I go through that. I make sure it's approved. And then after every date, I go back to that person and say, do I want to date them again? And that they make that decision. So very quickly, a dating plan, you can do it very simply as even just yes or no. So people I will date, they might be entertaining, they might be fun, they certainly have a job and they have a place to live, and we enjoy each other's company, and they laugh at my jokes, all that on the positive, so that kind of what you're looking for and what feels right. And then the other side is no, I don't continue dating this thing. And it's people like, they're still using drugs, they're living with their ex-wife, they don't ever spend time with their kids. I mean, because I have had people say to me, oh, I know he's using heroin, and yeah, he just got out of jail, but he's such a lovely person. So I would not make decisions, and I think that's a great guide. What I do is I go over my dating history, the things that have worked and haven't worked, with someone who understands and will be very clear and direct with me. And then I hold myself accountable to them. So I don't date someone 5 times and get involved when they're really not a good choice for me. So all I can say is I'm clear, I contract with myself and someone else, and I run it by other people to make sure that my decisions are healthy ones.
So I have two things to point out because you said I go over my previous dating history, and I think that that's a really important aspect of it, is to be able to talk to someone else about what are the places where you might be have some blind spots. Like these are the things that have gotten me less than desirable results in the past. So having
Right.
that awareness and the accountability, like you talk about, I would like you to talk a bit about so you've got a dating plan. What does a date look like? Because you've shared this before as well. So it's not going out to the most
Well,
romantic dinner in town.
no, a date is a brief uh, getting to know someone experience, and you both come in separate cars or vehicles or are separate, and usually in a brightly lit ugly coffee shop. And if you get through 20 minutes of coffee, then maybe a few days later, if you've chatted a little bit, then you might go out for a walk. For us, we have to slow down, and our thinking isn't always clear when we're in that moment of some people date and they're like, oh, this is exciting and this is great, and they're telling all their friends. For us, we get that way too, but it clouds our judgment. And so we need to make sure we set up dating so that it is safe. And once I get in a car with someone and we're going to their house, forget it. So I have rules, like Tommy said, about what is healthy dating and what isn't. And I'll tell you why. Did I ever tell you what I used to do for dates before I was in recovery? I was like 23. But here I knew in my early recovery, I had to have 3 dates. That was my rule, 3 dates. So I met
I know
them.
where this is
I
going.
met them at a club. That was the first date. We met outside at their car. That was the second date. And then we lined up at my house to open the door. That was number three, because that allowed me to meet my commitments and also have sex with them as soon as I met them. And that wasn't quite right. So having a plan, and by the way, I don't think saying 4 dates in a month or 6 dates in 2 months. I mean, first of all, we race to the next date to make sure, was this, and second of all, the goal is not to race to be able to have sex or fall in love. The goal is to get to know the person. And I don't know how long that's going to take. I'll say one thing that everyone hates, and I hated it too, which is I went to my therapist when I was single, and I said to him, okay, I really want to get with someone, and I've had a few bad experiences. And I said, how long do you really think it takes to get to know someone well? And he said, 2 years. And, I work with couples who move in after 6 weeks. And sometimes that's a miracle and you live with them for 30 years. But more often than not, people like us end up in really bad situations. And we fall in love with them. And then we're kind of stuck in those situations because of how we feel. So feelings are not, write this down. Feelings are not facts. No matter how I feel with someone, I may lose sight of the reality of who they are and what I need. I need other people to guide me.
Thank you. I think that's important to have, like, here's the plan, but what is a date? Because, it is not the 3 dates in
I
5 minutes.
had a lot of dates.
I'm sure you did. So
back in the day.
Okay. Next question. Dr. Rob, the betrayed partner of 45-year marriage. Thank you. My ex could not be but empathetic, stop his lies and meisms either. My essay did not realize what he lost, a banquet of love in front of them, home. So you did a podcast on what is home. So on our website, you can find a link to Sex, Love, and Addiction. I haven't looked in a while. It had over 1.1 million. I'm sure it's over 1.2 million now downloads. On that. So, but he did, I can't remember if it was a 1 or 2 part, but it was like, what is home? So can you just briefly talk about that?
Sure. But would you put the podcast in the chat? Because honestly, a lot of folks don't know much about this. And we have 100 and something podcasts, and I often hear a lot. I learned a lot from your podcast, or I made my sex addict husband or wife listen to the podcast, or I listen to them on the way to work. It keeps me from acting out. We don't get any money from our podcast. It's all free, but I do think I've always believed it's important to have meaningful information on there and not just fashion and movies. So obviously a lot of other people do because they're listening. So in answer to the question, I think for a long time, those of us who grew up in difficult families, we learned in a whole bunch of ways, including addiction, how to run away. I learned very early how to get out of there, how to escape. Sex was my best option to go find someone else to pay attention to me and get out of that place. And I had good reason. My home was very, very troubled. And in fact, I went to college and I left for college a year early. I didn't go to my senior year because I was waiting for a school that would let me in. So, it's just the way it was. And I had to survive. And that's how I survived. But oh, sorry, the sun is making me kind of look weird. But what I didn't understand, and I think that almost all the men I work with in particular don't understand, is that you grow up and however you grow up, and you have the experiences you have, and then this is what healthy people do. And they leave home and they go away and they have their life experiences, whatever, and then they create their own home. And that becomes, hopefully a healthy image of what they grew up with and kids and family and all that. But what I truly believe is that we run away from home like I did, and then we keep running away from home. So we set up those homes with loved ones and people really love and families and the whole thing, just like everyone else. But we don't stay there. We're running for other lovers. We're running for other people. We're running away. Sometimes the people I work with will think that they're running toward something, like I'm running toward this person, I'm running toward this job. But the reality is that, and to me, love is not the most important 4-letter word in the language. The most important word is home. Home is my foundation. Home is the support. Home allows me, and I mean home with a partner, with a family, something that I've built. It can be by myself, but I think that means having a whole bunch of people out there that I regard as home and relate to and all of that. But I know I'm much more successful. I'm much happier. I go out and fight the world and come home to support and love. And, I think one of the challenges for us addicts is that we have trouble staying in one place. And it's just so easy to say, well, this home isn't this and this home isn't that. So I deserve to go out there and do that. And I'll say one more thing. Tammy, you guys know, or maybe some of you do, I do 2-hour consultations and I sit with couples and I'm pretty good at guiding them from whatever challenge they're having into the next steps toward healing. And when I talk to the spouses about what are they concerned about? What are the issues at home? They call because of sex. They reach out because of affairs. But when I ask them, what are you unhappy about? They say this much of it is affairs and sex and all that. That's what triggers the crisis. But what they say to me is, he or she's not intimate. We're not close. I don't feel like we're really connecting. They're there, but they're not really there, or they're always at the computer, or they're not joining family life. Or the biggest concern I hear from the spouses, other than honesty, is a lack of connection, a lack of intimacy. And I think that's because we don't know how to stay home and we don't know what home means. And again, I'll say home is the foundation of my life, good and bad, right or wrong. When I said for better or for worse, I meant for better or for worse. And when things are bad, folks, that's your marriage. And when things are good, that's also your marriage. So anyway, I know that there's no better place for me to heal and grow in my healthy home. And the question is, which is a whole other discussion, is how do you know if you've created and you have a healthy environment? Which is something we should do a podcast about, by the way, Tammy. How do you
Well,
know?
yeah, I agree. But you also did, I was thinking, because you did a podcast on sex, love, and addiction with Dr. Stan Tatkin about We Do. And you talked about, like I come home and, like the home is the foundation. And when you are with a partner, the two of you talked about it, when you're with a partner and the relationship is the focus of what, if it's good for the relationship, it's good for each of you, then then you two are better against the world. However, if that's not the case, then it's an unhealthy relationship and you're not. And
Well,
like, it's the mental health, it's the physical, it's everything is negatively affected.
and I'm sorry to interrupt you. I did just have a 2-hour consult with a couple, and one of the things that came up is the addict male was saying, well, this is important and that's important. I want to do this, I want to do that, and she doesn't understand, and blah, blah, blah. And I had to remind, and when I said to him, you realize that the most important decisions must be thought of in terms of what is best for us. You want to have a happy relationship? Make your decision based on what is best for us, whatever that is. Do I buy this? Do I go see these people? They don't like my in-laws. What is going to be best for the two of us? And if you don't know, you can work on that. But making decisions by myself for my relationship has not made my relationship better whenever I've done that. What I usually get is, if you love me, why didn't you let me in? Maybe I wouldn't have agreed, but aren't we more important? All of that stuff. And in addiction, that's the biggest piece. When I go out to do whatever, is it really the best choice for my relationship? Or is it the best choice for me to have integrity and to be a better human being? One of the things that I also said on this consultation to this gentleman was, what kind of man do you want to be? Forget what you've done to your spouse. Forget all of the things that you've done out there. Do you want to be an honest person? Do you want to be someone who has integrity? Do you want to be someone who reflects on themselves and feels good? Because, what you're doing makes you feel like a bad person. And I don't think that's any way to live. And so, I think that's part of the whole how to conduct a healthy relationship is the honesty, the integrity, despite that it may not go well for me. So anyway, my
Well,
answer.
I will just briefly tag on it because we have more questions too. But I, like you and I both talk to lots of people, and I get exuberant, shall we say, for recovery. And I said again today to someone that, like, if you just understood how good life can be in recovery, it's not perfect. And, you know, recovery doesn't magically fix things, but that integrity that you're talking about, like I don't have to, you know, think about what lies did I tell today. I can go to
Right.
bed at night knowing that, you know, I have done the very best I can, and I have a clean slate and I can start tomorrow over again. And that is such a gift, because that is not how I lived. I lived in the chaos and craziness of addiction. So, okay, we have one more from last week and then we're going to get to this week. So this is on the next one. It says, "Hi, I've been with my wife for 14 years and I've recently realized that I am a sex addict after my last affair and numerous compulsive affairs, porn that began in my teenage years. I've been completely sober for 5 months, including alcohol, and I feel like I'm having a hard time finding healthy ways to cope other than just shutting down and being distant from my wife. I'm struggling with understanding and feeling intimate in other ways than sex. I know I have put my wife through hell, and all of this is relatively new for her, and I take complete ownership for what I've done. We are both currently in recovery, including 12-step groups and therapy. My emotions, my perspective, and probably my selfishness is all a new challenge that I continue to struggle with. I have read The Inner Child and Out of the Doghouse, and I will be reading both again. Any advice?"
Well, I think that all the goals you have are absolutely the ones that I would want to have. And a lot of the choices you're making and the way you're thinking about this, I think are wonderful. But it's been 5 months. 5 months. God, what was 5 months ago, Tammy? Like Halloween or something? I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah,
the end of summer. That's a blink. And if you're, anything older than 35, it blinks faster. So one of the issues I think we have is perfectionism and trying to get, it's sort of like every addict wants what they want when they want it. And so for me, it would be, well, I've worked all this and I really know a lot more things. And, I'm still struggling with the intimacy and the kindness. And, you just started. And I don't know that everyone understands this is a lifelong chronic condition. It is no different than depression or anxiety or other issues, mental health and brain issues that under stress we will return to. What's missing, I think, is also the rewards. And I wanted to say this earlier, Tammy, that a lot our work, not our work, but of a recovering person is I'm not going to do this and I'm not going to do that and I'm really not going to do this. But if that's all you do, Tammy sort of touched on this, you're not going to stay in the healing place. When someone's alcoholic, we have to take them to an alcohol-free dance and teach them like alcohol, you can actually have fun without alcohol. And one of the requirements of this work is that you create a whole list of things that bring you joy and or find some things. And one of the things I'm struggling with, Tammy, is I got to find something fun to do, like take a class or do, because work is just all consuming. And I will be a better person when I am meeting the fun needs and the enjoyment needs. I'm not saying you should meditate and go to therapy and all, but there has to be, I go play tennis or I enjoy garden, whatever it is, there has to be something to look forward to. So I look forward for you to having a much more healthy, engaged relationship. It may well be at 6 months that this is a time to do a little couples therapy. Um, don't we? I thought we had, I could be wrong. I thought there was some course. Doesn't Eddie teach a course? Because I think this person said they went to one of the web.
The
Let's
Inner
see.
Child. So I have read Inner Child and Out of the Doghouse. So I was going
Right.
to suggest the work group.
Good.
So I'll put the information in the chat, but go ahead, keep going.
We teach this.
Mhm.
Reading something is nice, but when you're sitting in a room with 25 people and you're hearing their responses and you're being taught and all of that, it's a very different thing. And I've taken a lot of my writing, which I think people have felt good about, and moved it into, workshop form. And the goal of that is you can get the pieces that you don't get in therapy or in 12-step meetings, because you need to understand how addiction works. You need to understand what it means and where it's coming from. And so basically, going all back to this, I think that your expectations are way too high of yourself. And I hope that spouses realize that, and I hate to say this, we can stop acting out, but becoming a kinder, more compassionate person, that takes time. And I hear a lot from you spouses, well, he or she's gotten sober. It's really great, but they're still a jerk. They're still incredibly narcissistic. And, one lesson at a time. I do think Out of the Doghouse, it is an empathy focused book and course on how to help a man understand and work through betrayal with a woman. And because my experience is most men don't know how to do that. It's been flowers, it's been candy. It's been 3 months. Why aren't you forgiving me? And that's just not it. So I think I've said it, Tammy. I think it's a kinder, easier walk. And I would also let your spouse know. Sometimes I don't respond in the right way. Sometimes I'm not listening. Sometimes I don't even know what you want. And I want to. I also think, I'm sorry to go on and on, that if you haven't done this right, you need to spend a lot more time asking the person you're with, what do they want? We make up all kinds of things in our head. Well, this will make them happy, that will make her. It may not be what you think. And so the beginning of exploring, not just the addiction piece and how that's affected, but what could make us a happier couple beyond all of that? And that you two could sit down and talk about. So I don't expect you to know, and I don't expect it to come automatically. It takes work to be a better person, just like it takes work to stop acting out. So I've said lots of things, Tammy. I hope I answered some of the question.
I have two things to add. So the
Good.
Out of the Doghouse work group, I put a link in the chat for that. They're always on our website. There's a
Okay.
work group tab, but the next Out of the Doghouse starts again February 9th. So there's opportunities to register for that. The other thing I wanted to tag on with what you said, because I'm having a hard time finding ways to cope, healthy ways to cope. I don't hear a 3-circle plan in this. And I'm not saying that you didn't do
Right.
one, but people have said, do the circles change? And I'm like, yes, I really hope that your outer circle continues to add more things that you like to do. You were talking about, I need to find some things to do. I went paddleboarding and hiking this weekend. Guess who feels really good today? I know, it's like one of those, but that brings me joy and fills my soul, and and I went to a 12-step meeting today, but like, it's one of those, my recovery and my healthy stuff is not just 12-step or recovery based. It is things, so would the two of you going for a walk, would you, like, I need to go for a walk. Me connecting to nature, going for a walk or run is a really good choice, so think about what are things that help you, and that you can be intentional about and pay, like, because that's coping, is like, like going for a walk. Like, sometimes I just go for a walk because that's helping me cope and process through things.
And
so
I want to add to that, which is I don't have very good handwriting. Don't tell anybody. And my husband's really into calligraphy. And he said, why don't we take a calligraphy course together? And I can advance my skills and you can, and it was one of those Japanese brush strokes. We did it together. We weren't talking about the problem. We weren't dealing with our emotions. We were just doing something that had nothing to do with our heads. And that drew us closer. So it may not just, I think I'm tagging off of Tammy here. It doesn't just have to be therapy and working on yourself. There may be things you can learn about with each other. I do want to say to you spouses, though, and I hear this a lot, and I understand this fully, but when we are recovering, when we're working on the early stages, when we're coming out of a treatment center, you want us available. I get that. You want us available as much as possible. You want us to take back some of the responsibilities laid on your shoulders for so long while we were absent. And here's the thing, when we say in treatment, or Tammy and I are saying, you need to take a class, or go back to playing tennis with friends, or whatever your joy was, spouses can say, well, wait a minute, you weren't here before and you were letting me down and the family down, and now you want to go out with your friends and work on cars. What about me? What about my time? How could you you had your fun. And here's the reality, is that we still need stuff to make us happy for ourselves. All we know is what we did before, and that made everybody unhappy. So even though I know you spouses feel like it's my turn and our kids and whatever that is, we do need places to go that are just fun and bring us joy, that are not sexual and not romantic. And by the way, I invite you to join us. Maybe we can have some fun together. My calligraphy, however, I have to say, I still I didn't do a very good job, but we had a lot of fun.
And you know, if it's cooking, you know, it doesn't, it isn't
Yeah.
so much the what it is that we're doing this together. And you know what, if you try something and that's really not your thing, guess what, try something else. I wanted to tag on though too, and I promise we're going to get to the next questions, but like I hear from partners who go, now he's out golfing, but he's golfing with all the unsafe people. These are the same
Right.
guys he went to Vegas and acted out with. That's not okay. It's called, you have to find new friends, you have to find friends that are going to support you in recovery. So doing those things is a good thing. Now partners also need, and you know, to have, you know, friends that are supportive, don't have to talk about recovery, but like just that you get the mental health breakup. These are, you know, I hiked with a friend, you know, so like just going out and being with other people is a good thing. So okay.
Well, and yeah, I mean, we could go on and on
Yes,
about that.
but we won't. We're going to get to the, now we're going to start on the questions for today. Have you ever discussed, or you agree or disagree that porn addiction is attributed to OCD? Is this addiction or addiction overall a result of obsessive compulsive? Thanks much. So can you talk about the relationship between addiction and
Sure.
OCD? Thanks.
So I think this is how I think about it, and I think it's been useful. Of course, I would, because I think about it this way. So I'm always validating me. But I think there's a real difference between, so both addiction and obsessive compulsive disorder are biological and nurture. Um, and both are there. We act out both, whether it's checking the stove and making sure there's 12 ceiling tiles and taking the left exit. We do all this obsessive stuff to release anxiety. We also drink, use, and act out addictively to relieve anxiety and to escape. The difference is that addiction is pleasurable. So to me, when I go drink, when I go use, when I go gamble, when I, you know, it is obsessive and compulsive, but it's fun. And there's a, or sorry, but there is an exciting, interesting, fun that drives me forward. Like I want to go do that. And to me, that defines addiction. When you're abusing the neurochemistry in your body to make yourself feel okay over and over again while you're not doing things that are healthy for you, that's addiction. But if you are checking the stove, counting, I've had people count the dots on my tie, Tammy. You know, my niece was just in treatment and she is OCD, also an addict. And she said, oh my God, for the first time I can think clearly. So OCD is really about doing the same things over and over again to alleviate anxiety and fear, but they're not fun. It's no fun to make sure you turned off the alarm clock 12 times. It's no fun to have to take the same exit on the freeway over and over again because you're scared if you take another one. So those aren't fun things. They also get in the way of recovery. So that's how I think about it. But here's something to think about. If you have questions about this, go see a professional. This is when you need to go see a psychiatrist and say, because I don't think porn addiction, someone asked me this actually. We had a psychiatrist and I was working with him and he said, oh yeah, your people are compulsive. They all have OCD. And I said, no. In fact, there's not much correlation in the research between OCD and addiction. The biggest correlation is ADD and addiction, attention disorder, impulsivity, that kind of thing. Oh, I'm going to go do this. I'm going to go do that. You know, all of that. I see it. I want it. I do it. That needs to be addressed. So we get obsessive, we get compulsive, but the question is, here's a good one. Are you obsessive compulsive in other parts of your life? Because OCD is not just confined to porn. You will find yourself in those other arenas like counting. And my niece said she used to count in her head, you know, how many steps do I have to this? And over and like, do I have this amount of money or that amount of money in the bank? This amount, like back and forth, up and down. That's OCD. But it happens in multiple areas. And I think that's actually part of the diagnosis, Tammy, is it has to happen in multiple parts of your life. So if it's just the porn, it's probably not OCD.
That was really helpful. Thank you for clarifying that. Okay, next question. How common is it to have nocturnal emissions for a recovering SA? My husband is 45 years old and has been sober for 2+ years. We have not had sex for the past 3 months now, and he seems to have nocturnal emissions weekly.
Well, I don't know what's really going on. and I don't know whether this is something your spouse has explained to you or you've actually experienced. I've had a lot of clients say, oh, I'm having nocturnal emission. Well, let me back up. When a man does not have sex for a period of time, which sometimes we really recommend nothing at all. By the way, men think, well, is something going to break or fall off? Or no. What'll happen is you'll have your body will take care of itself. You know, if you need to release in some way, both chemically and physically, like when you're 13, you'll have a nocturnal emission. However, every single week. And also, what does he define as this? Because I've heard men say, I get aroused at night and I masturbate because I'm uncomfortable, but it's a nocturnal emission because, I was aroused and I wasn't really looking at porn and I wasn't with someone and it was during the night. And so I would be very clear. Here's a great way to do it. I don't know if I've ever told you this, Tammy. One of the rules I used to have with the guys who have this kind of problem is I said, I want you to buy a pair of pajamas and I want you with a string and I want you to tie it really tight. And then I want you to put a knot in it and make sure it doesn't have, one of those things you pee out of. I don't know what you call those things.
A
Because,
fly.
yeah, make sure it doesn't have a fly because by the time you figure out how to undo that knot, you will be conscious enough to make right decisions. And isn't that great? I love that idea.
Yeah.
I know because I thought of it. But, you can't go do masturbation generally when you are still wearing a couple of layers of clothes. So I think nocturnal emission needs to be defined. I also, Tammy, you might say a little bit about what we're hearing about therapy, about couples, about, this might be a partner who needs to go to the betrayal group. We have also a training for betrayed partners so that you can understand what this stuff means and how to address it. What are your thoughts about nocturnal
Well,
emissions,
what I was
Tammy?
where I got caught was he's been sober 2.5 years and we haven't had sex in 3 months. So it feels like there's something going on because
Mhm.
at this point, if it's 2 years and he's in really good recovery, not just abstinence, I would think that there are repairs to the relationship. Now, there could be physical. I mean, somebody could have had surgery. Like there could be lots of other non-addiction reasons for it, but I was curious about that. And I am curious about, what has the recovery journey been? If it's just stopping the problematic behaviors, that's again abstinence, and that doesn't mean there's any real changes. It just means, okay, I've stopped doing that, but it hasn't addressed the underlying issue. So to me, there's a lot of and the other thing I would do is, if he's not gone to a urologist in a while, like getting a medical,
Thank you.
getting a medical
Especially at
screening.
45.
Yeah, I mean, that's just good taking care of your body. So
Did you know
that
that
would
they're recommending colonoscopies for 45 and older? It used to be, I don't know, 55 or something because there was one other thing, sorry, I wanted to say about this, which is triggered by what you just said, Tammy, which is unbelievably, sex and love addicts are sexually avoidant with people that we care about. I can have sex with a million, well, not a million, but I can have sex with lots of strangers and be totally aroused and enjoy it. But being with my partner and being in bed, and I'd rather read the New York Times. And that's not because, or any journal that you like. But the point is that once we stop acting out, then we have to work toward creating healthy sexual intimacy with our partners because a lot of us don't know how. And many, many sex addicts are so used to intensity. Like, I'm going to see this hot body, and then I'm going to go and I'm all excited and I can't wait. Healthy sexuality doesn't always happen that way. I may not look at my partner and say, wow, look at this part or look at that part, because I've seen those parts for a long time. So sexuality has to come out of, do I give you a back massage? Do I nurture you in some physical way? How are we exchanging some kind of physical interaction? One of the goals, I think, for us sex addicts, and I love this phrase, and I have to say this came from Omar Minwala, is um, is sex addicts in recovery have to move from horniness, meaning that's what turns me on, to willingness. which means I am willing to stay here and try this out and explore with you, even though there are parts of me that want to run away. And we don't want to run away from you, by the way. We run away from the feelings that we have getting close to you, because it brings up for us, believe it or not, trauma. We have our own stuff. There's a reason we act out sexually, but we're also intimacy avoidant. And so easing into a form of sexuality, it isn't about penetrative sex. It may be about massages, about hand holding. I might comb your hair. You might rub my head. But we're going to get into situations that are intimate, where I am willing to connect. And guess what? I got aroused. And guess what? We had amazing sex. But it wasn't like we're going to go in there and have sex, because I think that can sort of push it away, especially with the histories that we all have. But I'm willing to begin to connect with you physically. I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to connect with you physically. By the way, I just want one more thing about all that. Sometimes partners don't want to be sexual. I'm going to say this about addicts too. But you can hold me while I'm sexual with myself. That's not the same as going out and masturbating on my own. I might check it out with someone else. I might hold you while you engage. And you know what? I might get excited too. So I think there are many ways to engage in sexuality that don't have to be what we think about as sexuality. When I use the word intimate, Tammy, almost everyone goes to the word sex. And, I think when I say to you, Tammy, I'm really struggling with this, and my dog is getting older, and Tammy moves toward me and says, that's so hard, and me too. And that's intimate. We are in different states. We're not going to have sex, but I can open my heart and my feelings to her, and she will move toward me. That is intimacy. Sexual intimacy is sort of the end point of all of the intimacy that comes before. And like I said, most spouses are not complaining about sex. They're complaining about a lack of connection. Okay.
Next question. So let's see. Hang on, I gotta get there's my mouse wasn't moving. My 61-year-old husband discovered on October of 21, he's a porn addict and began acting out physically 12 years ago. I was blindsided. We were together 30 years, had formal disclosure, which it now appears he left some info out that would really hurt me. His therapist did not think these details were important. He went to an intensive, not yours, we didn't know about SI then, and had a counselor, did 12-step, etc. He was lying to everyone about his recovery. He violated his inner circle early on, about 5-month mark, not physically, but reached out to acting out partners and lied for another 5 months until he failed his follow-up polygraph. He has said he has now hit rock bottom and gone to a 38-day in person. I kicked him out.
Did you mean inpatient? Is that what you mean?
I guess. And I'm like, why didn't he come to us?
Why didn't they come to us?
So I know,
Anyway.
I don't know. Okay, I kicked him out as my boundaries were strict and clear. He's moved into an apartment. Is there hope for someone who has lied and been an addict for so long? I feel like there is more hope for younger men, but struggle believing someone could change at this age. So
we run a treatment center, and I think there's 2 or 3 men. I know we have one who's 77. I think
we've had over 80.
We have a 68-year-old. It is never too late to become a better person. And how do you want to go out of this world? How do you want to feel about yourself? And then there's always what I say to the older men, which is, who's going to clean up your poop when you're pooping your diapers and you can't get across the room because you need a walker? Who's going to be there for you when you're not thinking of yourself as young and sexy and all of that? The other thing is, and this is, I truly believe this, but I don't know your situation. Addicts don't start at, let me do my math, at 47 or something, 48. It's a lifelong condition. I do not believe that this partner spouse of yours started at 47. I think this has been a lifelong issue in one way or the other. A lot of people say, oh, the porn doesn't matter. In your case, it might be this, or I just get massages, or I don't know what else is going on, but there is more to this story. And by the way, if you were blindsided, I would not want to tell you about it. So I think there's more being left out than you realize. I'm almost positive about it. And I think, and by the way, and he's lying to everyone, violated inner circle. So let me just say one more thing about all that. We don't have an intensive. Intensives are things you do for a week or a weekend, or maybe you do, yeah, usually that. And you're sitting in class, you're sitting doing a lot of emotional work and all that. We have residential treatment. That means we are working with you 24/7. I'm there. We are kicking your butt and loving you at the same time. And it is not, I've taken intensives on relation. My husband and I went to a weekend on improved communication. That's an intensive. I know one of the programs that we work with has a 1 week intensive on this, a program that does a lot of residential work. That's not it. And if you spouses think, oh, well, they went to a weekend or they spent a week, that's not really intense. That is not intensive therapy. They're sitting in a group with 25 other men. It's more like the courses we teach online. But if you are in a crisis and this is that long of a relationship and he is still lying, and now he's out of the house, if he really wants, so let me say this. If I heard you make an excuse, which is he's already been to an intensive, but he didn't get it. He's not getting better. So I don't know what 38 days of in-person meant. I don't know. But these kinds of issues are not going to get resolved in outpatient therapy. And he lies.
And his therapist let him. His therapist did not think these details
enabled.
were, I know. I'm like, that just turns my gut.
Yeah, I would not. Now your husband gets to see whoever he wants. But what I was going to say, the last piece is, I don't know whether he wants to be in a relationship with you anymore. But if he does, then this is why I named the book Out of the Doghouse. He's in the doghouse. And you're the dog mom inside who gets to decide whether he gets to come back in or not, because he has dirtied his home. So if he wants to come back in and be with you, you get to decide what he has to do. If you say to them, and you don't have to come to us, you're going to have to go to real treatment, not just an intensive. Give Tammy a call, or I don't want to talk to you. He's going to have to decide. I guess there's some things I have to do to be in this marriage. 4 meetings a week, therapy twice a week. I don't care what, taking this course. I think you need to be able to identify the things that make you feel safe. Not things he said, well, I did this, or I talked to my therapist about that, because he lies. And I'll just say this, the clients I worry the most about are the ones who lie to their recovery groups and lie to their therapists. It's one thing to lie to your partner, but when you sit in meetings and say, I have a year sober, I have 6 months sober, there's something more troubling to me about that in a support group, because people start to look at you like, well, maybe they can help me, or you're a role model, or whatever that is. And those are the kind of lies I really don't want to have, because if nothing else, I don't want to hurt other people. And if I am lying and I'm saying how good this is and how helpful that is, I'm not helping them. And I'm certainly not helping myself. Behaviors have consequences. You might write that one down. Behaviors have consequences. And the behavior you're talking about, I think, needs a higher level of consequence. And who knows, Lord knows what he's doing out there while he's living on his own. So
well,
anyway.
I don't know if he's living on his own. So I'm going to tag in with
3 months.
We've had guys who have been to every other treatment program. And I always say, if we're not your first treatment program, we sure want to be your last. And so I don't know where he's at. Doesn't matter. They typically don't work from a prodependent lens. I've seen paperwork from some of the others, and it's all about codependency and what are you doing? What COSA group are you going in? Like blaming partners and spouses for the addict's behavior. So you ask if there's hope. It's not about the age. It is absolutely about the willingness. So what Dr. Rob talked about, it's like we've had guys in their 20s, and over 80. And you know what? For the ones that want help, and they're going to get, well, at our program, they get expert treatment to address not just the problematic behavior, but the underlying issues. So I don't know what help he's getting. I'm going to go back to you. You kicked him out. So what are you doing to take care of you? We have a betrayed partner work group starting March 1st on the Seeking Integrity site. So I would consider joining that. We've got, drop-in groups and webinars. You're here. That's good. But it's your healthy boundaries, and it's for your physical safety, financial safety, emotional safety, and spiritual safety. What do you need? And if he's not able to attend to those, how do you make sure that you're taking care of you? So But I'm
And I
really
want to
sorry.
add
I really hate when,
children,
yeah,
grandchildren,
yeah, yeah,
I have a client in treatment who said, oh my God, I can't fix the harm I caused to my kids, but I could really be like a granddad, but not while he's going to massage parlors 3 days a week. And
no,
I want to
yuck.
be sitting on that patio in a rocking chair with my spouse, rocking back and forth. That's what I want my future to be. I also want to tell you, I'm 61 years old. I know it's hard to believe because I look so amazing, but I'm 61 years old. And I know now that I have an expiration date. I've lost, I watch the news and I'm not an obituary, I can't say the word, obituary watcher, but I do see things on TV like so-and-so passed away. They had a great life. They did this and that. They died at 74. And I'm thinking, oh, that's not that far away. How do I want to spend that time? You know, and I guess one more thing. For some reason, sex addicts think, number one, life's going to go on forever. And number two, I'm still incredibly attractive and I know I can trust me, I don't look like I did at 50 or 40, at 30. And when you get older and you're out there looking for it, it ain't so pretty. Ending up paying for it or whatever happens. One more thing. Porn isn't just porn now. Porn is free for the most part because porn is a platform into someone saying, "Hi, I'm here living in I don't know, the waters off Afghanistan in an island, and you're paying me $1 a day to strip naked." And so, what the point of many of the porn websites is to get your credit card or whatever that is to get you paying someone to strip or do whatever they do. So even though just porn sounds like I'm looking at magazines, that world is very different than the one that I grew up in.
Okay. Does sex addiction ever show up later in life, as a majority of the out of the control acting out starts in their 40s, 50s, etc.? I understand that makings of an addict happen in childhood with trauma. However, is it possible that an addict has lived the majority of his adult life not acting out other than watching porn occasionally, but then the out of control destructive behavior starts later in life?
So my first response is no. We have lifelong trauma that started at an early age, and we don't just start acting that out at 40. These are ingrained psychological and biological patterns in our brain. So this did not start in this person's 40s. However, I want to make a caveat. Mental illness can arise when you're older. You can become or find yourself, and as your kind of emotional immune system, we get a little older. I have a cut; it takes longer to heal. Well, my brain may not be, well, it isn't what I was 20 years ago, and I may be more vulnerable to mental illness. And mental illness can lead to acting out. So if you ask me if someone in their 40s got incredibly depressed, or started to get manic, or or they became OCD or whatever, I think if a psychiatrist says to me, if I went to a psychiatrist or if I didn't have a history of mental health issues later in life, then I would say no. And if that's the case, I would have the person evaluated just to make sure that this wasn't triggered by something else. But in my experience, and Tammy can speak to her own, I have never I've seen sex addicts lie about when it starts all the time. But actually, I'll give you one more. I'm talkative tonight. I've talked to addicts who've been married 3 times. And when they're in this relationship now, but they've lost that one or they lost the one before. And almost every time when I say, well, how did you lose that relationship? Oh, she was this and they were that. And yeah, but was there infidelity there? Well, yeah. Is that what ended the relationship? Well, yeah. So it can take all kinds of forms. But I have not seen people just become sex addicts. The other thing I do want to say is alcohol and drugs. If they started using alcohol and drugs at a later point in life, then that might, or it escalated, that might also be something that leads to impulsive or out of control behavior. Yeah.
Or they quit. I hear a lot, they quit
Yeah.
drinking, 15 years ago. And so then they just switched to this. So that would be my only caveat is, were they doing something else that they stopped and this became,
right.
The addictive process was there, the dissociation, compartmentalization.
Right.
but how they were playing it out might have been different.
I will also say that, yeah, it's addiction's a whack-a-mole, and it's also co-occurring, so it can be going on with other things. But anyway, I want to answer more questions.
Okay, how do I be present and attend Prodependence meetings and work on healing from infidelities when my partner of 27 years isn't sure she wants to be with me or her affair partner? So female addict. We live together. She isn't seeing him, her affair partner, and started SLA a few months ago. He is married and out of the picture right now. But do I do Prodependence meetings for myself? Yes. And when she is ready to say yes, I want to stay in our relationship. Thank you. So it's,
They're different questions.
yes. So yes, regardless of what and it doesn't matter, male or female, partner and addict, in that you need support to take care of you regardless of what the addict chooses to do or not do, so you having healthy boundaries. And what I was thinking of is, why does she get to be the one that picks? What do you need to do to take care of you? Like, do you want to be with somebody who is, waffling on, like, and on no judgment, honestly, this is really like, I'm just thinking of things and going like, like, do you want to go, like, I want to be in a relationship. I mentioned earlier, Dr. Rob's podcast with Dr. Stan Tatkin. If we're putting our relationship first, we're better together. Dr. Rob talked about sitting on the front porch rocking, with his spouse, like, that's a vision that he's holding for not tomorrow, it's like, so like, what do you visualize? And,
Right.
and you're sitting there waiting, is she going to pick me? Is she going to pick me? Do you pick somebody that is not able to step into the relationship in a real and meaningful way? Now, you can put the relationship on hold and say, I'm willing to see, if she's really willing to do the work. That, that's, we call it safe harbor. We're going to take a time out and not make any major decisions and see. But like, I kind of want to push you a little bit to value setting healthy boundaries for you. What do you need for you? What do you need to value you the most? Because she isn't. So
Tammy is
Dr. Rob.
feeling protective of someone who is letting a troubled person determine their life. And she's encouraging you to empower yourself. Yes, you want the relationship. That's what you want most of all. But do you want to be pulled around? Yes, I want you. No, I don't want you. We have to set boundaries for ourselves, what we can tolerate and what we can't. There are a couple of things I wanted to say specifically. Number one, I want to explain prodependence briefly.
Thank you.
Codependency is a model from the 1980s that basically says, if you're involved with an addict, then there's something wrong with you. You invited them in, you shouldn't be tolerating them, you need to go leave or individuate. Let's look at your past to figure out how you ended up in this relationship. There's a lot of picking at the spouse, I think, with an implication of, let's see what part you have in it. In fact, I don't think that's implied, that's stated. What I'm interested in a recovering partner is to say to you, I think you're amazing. To hang out in there with such a difficult relationship, to tolerate the lack of intimacy, to be willing to be open to things that are difficult. I think y'all are heroes. And I really, really do. If I was around supporting my spouse through cancer, you would say, you're a hero. This is amazing. You've given up so much to be with them. That's amazing. Addiction is a disorder too. And if you decide to be with me, to work with me, to tolerate the difficulties, I'm going to say you have incredible strength and you're a hero, not look at what's wrong with you. I think everything is right with you for being willing to try. I also want to say something about that. One of the things that I think partners do, and I hear this a lot, you spouses, you hold the hope and the vision for who we might be or who we were. You can see the possibilities for now. Living on hope, not a good idea. But you can see who we are and who we might become. And to me, that's in part why you stay, with the hope that maybe if we turn our lives around, we can begin to move toward that person that you thought we were. So Prodependence is a model that says, good for you for staying with that person because, why did you stay? Because your mother did this and your father did that. No, you stay because you love this person. And just because someone has abused you and let you down, all of you spouses know you don't stop loving them. And that's the painful part. And then there's the part about I love them and I hate them at the same time. I look at them over here and they're amazing. I look at them over there and I hate them. You know, that's part of it. The other thing I wanted to say is about how or when to stay in the relationship. I got to say, this is what I do in consults. I sit down with couples who are struggling with the meaning and the reality of where they are, and we get very clear about their next steps. Sometimes they don't even like what I had to say. I don't know if you knew that, Tammy, but I'm really, you probably hear about it. I am more interested in being respected when I work with you guys and you hear my voice, whether you like it or not, than you liken me. And these consults are a lot about shaking the addict and saying, what are you thinking? And in this case, I would want to say to your partner in front of you, how dare you put your partner's life on hold and you decide what's right and what isn't? I confront and I challenge, because I would never want to see you treated like that. Anyway, I'm okay. I'm good. Let's keep going.
I know, and there's so many good questions that I want you got to hang in there with me, a couple of them. So,
well, but Tammy, I really appreciate that you're carrying them on to the next week, because then nobody feels like, you know,
no,
they went
but there's
on
a
too
couple
long.
of them. But yeah, so okay, so thank you for all you do. I'm the offender in my marriage, and I'm gonna I bristle at that. So, and my wife and I have both been in recovery for almost 6 months now for the damage I've caused. I'm realizing for me that the battle with sex and intimacy begins in my mind. Do you have any suggestions or advice for retraining my mind?
Well, first of all, you're not an offender. You may have, and I don't, if you mean sex offender, you know, that means very specific things.
Right.
And it has to do with non-consensual sex. It has to do with illegal sex. It has to do with a lot of things that leave someone being called an offender. You have offended your partner, and what you've done is offensive. But the word offender I worry about, because it leads people to thinking about sex offender, and sex addicts are not sex offenders. We don't cross that line, fortunately, most of us. So what I don't see here, Tammy, I know what you're going to say. I don't see anything about 12-step programs. I don't see anything about support groups. I don't see anything about therapy. I don't even see anything about coming to the free groups we offer. So here's the deal. You cannot retrain your brain on your own. In fact, you will never retrain your brain. You will learn. It's like trauma. If a therapist came to me and said, I can cure trauma, I can make trauma all better, I would say, I never want to send someone to you, because we are who we are and we've been through what we've been through. But we can learn to adapt to it. We can learn to live differently. We can learn to make conscious choices about how we're going to live our lives. But will that part that needs to be retrained going to be there? Absolutely. Because that part of our brain was trained when we were 5 or we were 3 or we were 7. And we can't go back and give ourselves a different training when our brains were just coming online. But as big adult people, we can learn through therapy, through 12-step programs, through accountability, how to recognize when we're thinking crazy and how to make other decisions. But the thinking crazy, that's not going to go away, unfortunately.
So, and I will capture all but there's one that is highly troubling. What is the best way to explain to your adult children, 21 and 23, about dad being in SAA when all they see is the pain in the relationship? So can we take that one? Or
can you just ask the first sentence before you get to 21? Just give me the first 7 words.
Oh shoot, I just screwed up my screens.
Okay. That's right. I'll ask it. What is the best way to explain to your adult children? Don't.
There it is. Yes.
Don't. It is no child or adult child needs to know about their parents' sex life. No child needs to look at their dad or their mom and say, I can't believe they did that. It makes your marriage, if you want to ever continue it, a nightmare, because the kids will take sides and then they'll say, well, you did this to mom or you did this to dad and don't you get back? In other words, they become in the middle. I don't think children of any age should be told this. However, you do need to tell them that there's something wrong. Your dad and I are really struggling with our relationship. We're having to do a lot of therapy. We're very angry at each other. What about, that's really our stuff. I don't want to get you kids involved in the details of our struggles because that's our problem. We're the adults. What we can say is, We love you. We're working on it actively. We sure hope it gets better. But the sex part, the infidelity part, take that to your friends, take that to your loved ones, take that to therapy, take that to our free groups, take it to clergy, but don't take it to your children. I know there's a book coming out on this, Tammy. I've heard a little bit about it. I don't think it's out yet, but I'm really looking forward because a lot of people don't understand this. I actually heard Stephanie Carnes when she was 16 or something like that. There was a forum on this issue. Marcus Earl was there. There were 3 kids who were children of reasonably famous or well-known sex addicts, and all of those people had told their children. And now these children were sitting on a stage, and guess what they were saying? I wish I'd never known that. I wish, because now I can't unknow it. And by the way, if your kid thinks dad has a sex problem and they don't really understand, are they going to feel comfortable letting dad be around the grandkids? Are they going to be comfortable? You know, they are not doing the work you're doing, and they're not going to understand. So when they see pain in their relationship, tell them absolutely that is happening. You want to validate their reality. So they don't say, it looks like you're in trouble. And we say, oh, everything's fine. That hurts them. But what hurts them more is talking about the details of your sexual and intimate relationship. That does not belong with a child of any age. My opinion, my experience.
Thank
Tammy,
you.
why did you pick that question, Tammy?
Because
just tell me.
like I was afraid that if we waited till next week, they were going to tell the kids this week.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, you know, because I'm like, well, then get them a good trauma therapist. Because we hear so often because people, well, they deserve to know, or they're going to become addicts. And I'm like, no, there's no research on that they're absolutely going to become an addict if they don't. And you know, like now you can't untell them. You know, you can't untell them. So now
I want to say, when your child is 21 and 23, they're adults. You know, if they have issues like addictions or whatever, you can say things like, you know, just so you know, addiction runs in our family, or we have generational issues and, you know, with addiction. You can talk about it that way, but they're adults. I wouldn't pull them back into their parental relationship. And when you talk about that with them, they move toward you and the problem. When 21 and 23-year-olds need to move away and focus on their lives. So this is not their problem. Don't make it their problem. And they will never forget that mom did this or dad did that. It will never leave their head. And by the way, we have a client at the treatment center who said, you know, he said something like, my wife told the kids in anger, and now I don't have a relationship with my children anymore because they took a side and they said, I don't want to talk to you, Dad, for 3 years. And that's really not their job to cut someone off because they hurt mom or dad. That's your job. You can cut them off if you want, but this is still their father. And they get to be that father, and their kids need to look at that father in a certain way. You can say, Dad has hurt me, Dad has let me down, we're really struggling. But the details, well, I think I've said it. Don't tell your children.
Okay, so I captured the questions. So come back next week. We'll ask those. We'll start with those, but bring your new questions as well. So
one more thing. If you want information about a therapist in your area or a group or about treatment, or Tammy knows a lot of people in the field. We've been doing this a very long time. And so you can reach out to TAMI, everyone spells that wrong, TAMI at seekingintegrity, it's right up there.com. Tammy is always willing to give you a referral or give you, you know, support about how to find me or get whatever you need, a book. It's part of what we give away is resources. So I really encourage you, if you're looking for something and you're not finding it out there, drop Tammy a note. She'll either give you an answer or she'll push you towards someone who can.
Yeah.
And thank you, Tammy, for doing that.
Lots of resources on Seeking Integrity, including support sessions. So that they are not with Dr. Rob, but 25 or 50 minutes. I do some, but my colleagues, you know, Scott and Jason do as well. But Dr. Rob does really very valuable expert consultations that can be so helpful in guiding. You know, it's a mess and you're stuck and you're going, what do we do?
But they're not fun.
they're not, no, this is no, but they can be validating. They can be hopeful. Like couples can
Oh,
go, oh,
very
we can,
hopeful.
yes, yes. So I see a lot of, that. And, but yes, sometimes they're mad at you, but oh,
And
well,
I'm going to throw one more thing in there, which is a lot of people say they object to the term addict, or they don't want to be called addicts, or, and I just want to tell you that if I have a disorder, I want you to tell me what it is. If I have something going on with my skin, tell me what it is. And then I can have hope for myself and find treatment or healing. For some reason, people say, oh, addiction. The word addiction is, to me, it gives you hope because it is an answer. It tells you what is wrong with you and why you've been doing these things and what the steps are to heal. And I would much rather have a name for it and have a direction toward healing than be told, well, you just have a sex problem, or be told you're fine. You just need to loosen up around having more sex.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or like one person, we'll get to it next week, but they, oh, porn isn't really, it's not really a problem. I'm like, well, it's clearly a problem because it's wrecking your relationship,
And
so.
I have so many in those consults. Someone will say, well, I've been having affairs, I've been this and that, but that's only happened in the last few years. And then I say, how long have you been looking at porn? Oh, I look at porn a lot for years. Guess what? Even though that is an immediate part of the problem, it is a global part of the issue. That's what I meant by you don't start at 40. There's always something else in the past. Anyway, thank you, folks. I'm going to go have dinner and, put on a sweater because it's 56 degrees here in California. And Tammy, always great to work with you.
Likewise. Okay. Thanks, everybody. See you next
Bye
week
for
and join the
now.
other resources. Bye-bye.